The original Rayman was a 2D platformer designed by a man called Michael Anzel. This game was made in 1995 and it went through many different iterations and it was on so many different types of consoles. I remember playing it on my Nintendo DSi. You play as the named Rayman. He has no limbs, as you might be able to tell. It's a bit odd, but he was designed in 1995 and his games came out in the early 2000s during the mascot era of gaming. So these mascots were designed to put a comforting face towards a company or a gaming console. Prime examples of these would be characters like Crash Bandicoot, Sly Cooper, Jak and Dexter, Ratchet and Clank, Sonic, Mario? These characters all represent their brands. Despite Rayman's apparent disability, he can actually walk and run and jump better than any other person. See, his hands and his feet move independently from his body and actually allows him to throw his fists incredibly long distances to punch someone from afar. Furthermore, in some versions of Rayman, he actually can shoot fireballs or some form of orb from his hand to hit enemies. See, another one of Rayman's many gifts is that he can glide with his strong head of hair.
He uses all these tools to his disposal and takes care of the bad guys. But what else is there to Rayman?
What is the story of Rayman? Well, the short answer is we don't really know. See, there is no long-form story for Rayman. The main timeline, there is 5 Rayman games. Quite a lot. What we do know is Rayman protects the Dream Glades. The Dream Glades is the area that Rayman takes place in. He does this with the help of his friends, and he protects all of the local populace from the Black Lums, Hoodlums, and mechanical pirates. Rayman fights through 6 worlds of evildoers. He does this to save Electoons. The Electoons are locked in cages by a mysterious bad guy. Throughout the game, you get different abilities, mostly from a fairy called Bellatina, but you also get them from your friends along the way. It's a bit weird, but your friends can just give you abilities for a short period of time, so it's like a buff. At the end of your journey, you face off against a mystical Dr. Dark, and in doing so, prove he's evil. And this concludes the end of the first game. Now, this game won many awards, but was still quite lesser known in terms of all the other titles mentioned before. And this was mainly due to the fact that Ubisoft was not well known at the time. It was one of the underdogs, if you can believe it. And so ended the first chapter of Rayman's story. It was really interesting to see now, looking back, because I never got to play Rayman. I was born in 1998, so this was before my time. But the next chapter is something I actually know. Rayman 2, The Great Escape. Rayman 2 starts off a little differently than Rayman 1. In Rayman 2, he goes through very few changes, except for the fact it's a 3D platformer now, not a 2D platformer. Rayman still has his whimsical look of a childlike figure, but the start of this is a little different. See, while Rayman 1 started off with just his friends being kidnapped and for him to go save them, the classic plot of every platforming game essentially. Well, Rayman 2 starts off with the invasion and occupation of an alien race and the kidnapping and attempted murder of Rayman. Early 2000s were a bit edgy, huh? See, the world's being invaded by an alien set of robotic pirates led by the Admiral Razor. So not only are they occupying the planet and have kidnapped Rayman's friends and have blown all of his gathered abilities out of his body, he also has a few other things to say. See, these deadly pirates have enslaved 100 planets in the galaxy, and they want to enslave this one. It's very stark contrast opening to, you know, the whimsical 2D platformer that Rayman 1 was, talking about the occupation and enslavement of a people. Dream Glaives are in trouble. During this battle, a primordial core was exploded, and it separated into 1,000 yellow lums. Now, lums are a collectible item throughout every Rayman game. Some give you health, which are the red lums, and other lums are like coins from Mario. You collect them for score. Unlike its predecessor, in this game you go around fighting robot pirates instead of wonderful and fantastic creatures. The world is still incredibly vibrant and looks beautiful to walk around, but Rayman can no longer do his signature wind-up punch, or any ability for that matter. See, instead you're quite quickly given this ability to shoot balls of light from your hands. But this game, as I said, has a much needed bump in terms of the quality of said gameplay. You see, in general, there's just more mechanics, and the puzzles are just overall better, and it makes for a much more deeper and impactful gameplay experience for the player. The gameplay loop for this game is to run around these worlds and levels and collect lums, and if you collect a certain amount of these lums, you unlock a new ability. Much like the previous game, these abilities allow Rayman to now access areas of the game that were previously inaccessible, blocked by a big boulder or a fat guy. As I said, Rayman is, at the end of the day, going to be saving the day. So he goes through and fights new areas, new bosses with in-depth mechanics and designs. They are quite unique and interesting if you ask me. Okay. Overall, I found the game really enjoyable. The bosses were satisfying to fight and to beat. Playing this game was weirdly nostalgic for me because it is the first Rayman game I ever played, but to be honest, I can't even remember what I played it on or how I played it. I just remember the game from booting it up. I looked at it and I knew I had seen it before. I knew I was fighting robot pirates. I knew that there was one jump at the start tutorial that I couldn't do when I was a child. It was really interesting. I didn't think I could feel nostalgic for a game I didn't even know I played, but I definitely know I could feel nostalgic for a game I did play. And I definitely played Rayman 3 Hoodlum's Havoc. Don't get me wrong, the past two games I've talked about are actually really good, no cap. And a lot of people think Rayman 2 is the pinnacle of Rayman, and I wouldn't disagree with them to a degree, but Rayman 3 exists. I never had a PlayStation 1, I never had a PlayStation 2. I didn't get to experience the mascot characters I named before, at least not until I was much older. Rayman was the first mascot character game that I played. This game starts off like any other Rayman game. There's a bad guy and he's doing bad things. See, Andre is this black lum. He's running around, turning all the red lums that would usually heal you and are good guys into black lums. And when the black lums swarm together, they create hoodlums. They shear wool from sheep and create a cloth for them to cover themselves, and they puppet the cloth like a man. It's really cool. See, the local comedian Murphy, who is the frog fairy of the other games, discovers that this is happening, and it's happening really fast. The hoodlums have actually taken over a lot of the forest that Rayman is in at the moment. Murphy finds Rayman and Glowbox asleep and incapable of waking up, apparently. So, Glowbox is pulling on Rayman's hand. Murphy is lifting him up off the air, and in doing so, disconnects Rayman's hands from his body. So Murphy grabs Rayman's hair and starts flying through the air away from the swarm of black lums. This starts the tutorial where you realize Murphy is really fucking annoying. He was voiced by some comedian, and all the one-liners he pumps out really remind you of Gex.
How long are we gonna go around in circles? I'm gonna end up barfing.
Although in Rayman 3, it's edgy Rayman, so we're self-aware. The tutorial is done by Murphy reading the manual in-game and talking about sequels to the game and how to actually move around. But you're all doing this without hands. Rayman doesn't have his signature punch. So the game isn't really about saving people, it's about saving one person, Glowbox. The entire campaign is you going through areas and situations that you are forced upon and to be put in. And all you want to do is go to all these doctors to save Glowbox's life, to see if you can have a surgery to remove Andre. You go from doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor until the very end. At the end of every area, like there is in every Rayman game, there is a boss and then there is a doctor. There's variation in the enemies as well. It's not just different types of hoodlums because they're all reskins kind of. There's very unique bosses and other enemies as well, like the hunter and the stompy guy, I don't even know his name, and also that one removed guy that I'm really upset got removed. But there's other unique enemies as well. It isn't just reskins of hoodlums, there's also the Canaran, which are some desert mummy lizard people that eat people, so they're zombies as well. I don't really know what's going on there. Speaking of the Canaran, they are actually probably the big bad of the game. The hoodlums are sure they're foot soldiers, and Andre's a really bad dude who really could end the world at any time. But he teams up with the Canaran once he's released from Glowbox by all the doctors. And so the final boss takes place. Rayman fights a massive bloated up version of this Canaran warrior, which adds new gameplay elements that have not been seen throughout the entire game and probably is the worst part of the game. See, I really love this game. I do, and I understand and know its flaws now. See, just because something isn't the best version of that type of game, it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be played or enjoyed. And it also shouldn't lessen my experience. It was the first game I ever played and was really proud of actually beating because at the time it was really difficult as a kid. Replaying it, I know I was a stupid noob and bad, but I didn't know that then.